Trump or Kamala?
Trump. I don't know.
Trump or Kamala? Trump or Kamala?
Trump.
Definitely Trump.
Donald Trump.
Trump or Kamala? Trump or Kamala?
Kamala, yeah.
Trump or Kamala?
Oh, Trump.
You. Trump or Kamala?
No.
Trump or Kamala?
I'm gonna have to go with Trump, brother.
I don't know.
Trump or Kamala?
Oh, absolutely Trump.
Trump or Kamala?
Trump.
Trump or Kamala?
I don't even know who Kamala is.
Electra Janis is the vice chair of the Washington County Board of Commissioners. A 28-year-old Republican voting for Trump, she thinks that Trump can keep the gains he made with younger voters when Biden was still in the race.
I will say when I'm voting for President Trump, I'm not voting for a person. I'm voting for his policies.
Breaking this morning, new polls with good news for Donald Trump in key battleground states as Vice President Harris unveils a new aggressive plan for the week. The closest election we have ever seen. That is what this one is, at least right now. Brand new polling this morning shows Donald Trump narrowly ahead in 3 critical battleground states, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. This after polls last week that showed the opposite. Harris narrowly ahead in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. The new polling from the New York Times and Siena College shows that Trump has a 5-point lead in Arizona. In Georgia and North Carolina, it is within the margin of error.
One of the things that we should note, and I don't know if we can show this number, I want to put this up on screen. Latino voters have moved away from Harris in Arizona. If you believe this New York Times poll, her lead has shrunk by 11 points in that voting bloc. She was at 60% in August, now 49% now.
Boy, oh boy, I gotta tell you guys, we got more bad news for Kamala Harris, okay? As it seems as if the debate has officially backfired, right? And I'm using the word backfired because not only is she not getting the post-debate polling boost that the mainstream liberal media swore up and down that she would get because she, quote-unquote, won the debate, it seems as if the opposite effect is happening, right? You actually have Trump gaining on Kamala Harris, specifically in the key battleground states post-debate. And this poll from the New York Times that dropped today is absolutely devastating for Kamala Harris, okay? She is losing some key demographics, like, for example, Hispanics and men as well, too, right? That poll, again, just all around devastating for Kamala Harris when it comes to those demographics. But when you actually look at some of the swing states here, the ones that are up for grabs, we have some very, very, very devastating news for Kamala Harris because it seems like Trump is pulling away in the so-called Sun Belt. In fact, outside of that, I mean, just in the battleground states in general, Trump has actually pulled ahead, right? He's taken back the lead from Kamala Harris overall in the battleground states, according to the Real Clear Politics poll average. Now, again, this is terrible for multiple reasons because going into October, Kamala Harris should be doing a whole lot better, right? Considering the past history of polling and how they underestimate Trump at the polls because he overperforms at the ballot box. This is devastating, right? This is not good at all for Kamala Harris. And I want to go ahead and play this clip here from News Nation and dive a little bit deeper into what's happening. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Now to the campaign trail, where new polling appears to show former President Trump gaining ground in a few key states with just 6 weeks now until the election. Today's New York Times and Siena College poll has Trump in the lead in Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina, 2 of which President Biden won back in 2020.
Now, I want you guys to notice something here, right? This is a trend that remains the same even after Biden dropped out of the race. Because when Biden was in the race, the weird part was that the more diverse the swing state, the more likely the swing state would lean more Trump. Now, why is that happening? Well, that's happening because the so-called minority voters in the swing states, they are going for Trump, right? This is why when you look at the polling of Hispanics and black people, Kamala Harris is not doing nearly as well as she should be doing.
What's the most important issue for determining your November vote? And this is Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and average. Look at what's number one, the economy / inflation. 31%. That's a great issue for Donald Trump. He's always led on the economy and inflation. How about immigration? Issue number 2, 16%. Another great issue for Donald Trump. Only when we get down here to abortion at 16% is where Kamala Harris does particularly well. So 2 of the 3 top issues are issues on which Donald Trump does better than Kamala Harris. So not much of a surprise that he's leading the poll. How about this? I think this is really interesting. All right, choice for president, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina. All right, Hispanic voters. 4 years ago, Joe Biden won that vote 66% in the Sun Belt. Look at where we are now. Kamala Harris at just 52%. So Kamala Harris struggling among Hispanic voters. Donald Trump doing considerably better than he did 4 years ago. How about black voters? Kamala Harris, again, leading here by a significant margin, right? She's getting 83% of that vote, but that is significantly short of Joe Biden's 92%. So the bottom line is, in the Sun Belt, which is much more diverse than the northern battleground states up in the Great Lakes, Kamala Harris is struggling among voters of color, Jake.
Okay. Kamala Harris needs to be pulling about 65%, 70% of the Hispanic vote. She needs to be pulling 90+% of the black vote consistently in order to be doing well. Okay, she's not doing better than her predecessors, despite the fact that she's being advertised as the candidate of color, right? It seems as if the race card has been played a little bit too much by the Democrats. And what you're saying is that these so-called minorities, just like white voters, just like everybody else in the country, hey, they're concerned about the economy. They have been impacted by the terrible economy of the Biden administration. Okay, when you talk about inflation, when you talk about the cost of living, housing, interest rates, things like that. Yeah, Hispanics, black people, hey, they've been significantly impacted. And because of that, they're leaning more towards Trump because they know that when Trump was in office, the economy was in much better shape. And then when you look at issues like illegal immigration, which I think is very much underrated in regards to the Hispanic vote and the impact that it will have in favor of Trump. There are a lot of Hispanics who have come here legally, okay, who despise illegal immigration, right? That want the border closed and secure because they understand that illegals coming into the country is not a good thing for them, okay? Just like it's not a good thing for the rest of the country, right? The assumption that Hispanics like illegal immigration, right? And they want all their cousins and uncles and aunts and everybody to come into the country, right? They want an open border. I think that that's a bad assumption, right? I really do. Okay, so I think that you're seeing the impact of that, again, in these states that are more diverse, okay? And what they mean by diverse is less white. But what is interesting on the flip side is that Trump is struggling a little bit more in the states that are more white, right? Like the Rust Belt states. I'm not entirely sure what is up with those individuals there. I got a feeling it's probably just liberal white women, right? It's probably mostly just women. Trump is not performing as well as he's performing in these states, but he's still within the margin of error, right? And Trump did overperform in all the Rust Belt states in the 2016 and 2020 election. So again, even in those states, right, it's still not a good sign for Kamala Harris because again, Trump just tends to overperform in the actual election. So yeah, Trump, again, he's looking very, very, very good right now. I mean, this is the best that Trump has ever polled at this point ever, right? He's never been this strong.
But you also need money to run a campaign, and new numbers show Harris well in the lead there. Washington correspondent Kelly Myers live for us outside of the White House. And Kelly, Trump seems to be pulling ahead in those Sun Belt states. What does this mean for both campaigns?
Yeah, 42 days until Election Day, and former President Donald Trump is getting a boost of support in the Sun Belt. Former President Trump was just in Arizona 1 week ago, and we know Vice President Harris will try to catch up with a visit to Arizona this Friday. Now, former President Trump gained a lead in Arizona, 50% to Harris's 45%. Just to note, he also remains ahead in another 2 battleground states, key here, Georgia and North Carolina. And Trump lost Arizona and Georgia to Biden in 2020. And a Democratic presidential candidate hasn't won North Carolina since 2008. Harris is trailing Trump there by a slim margin and has been visiting that state nearly once every week. A poll also found Harris is losing support from Latino voters in Arizona. And also what's interesting there is this ticket splitting that's going on. The Democratic Senate candidate is still ahead, though Harris is behind Trump. And as you mentioned, Nicole, you need money to fuel the campaign in these last few weeks. And Harris's campaign just announced another $27 million it raised at an NYC fundraiser this past weekend. They say that's the largest single event since Harris has been at the top of the ticket. One official saying the campaign is grateful because they are gearing up to contend with outside super PAC spending from the Trump side. And speaking of Trump, he will be heading to Georgia and North Carolina, those other states that we mentioned. He will be there this week. But it's interesting to note Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, who is well liked in the state of Georgia, will not be joining him in Savannah tomorrow, we're learning. Nicole.
All right, so another important state in all of this, Kelly, Wisconsin. You were just there covering the Harris campaign. What were you hearing from voters there?
And it's really mixed, especially in the more rural areas. You see yard signs for Trump, but also a lot for Harris. And there's this question.
Really? Are people really putting out yard signs for Harris and Tim Walz? I haven't really seen that yet, right? Haven't seen that yet, okay? But allegedly they exist, right? People are out here proudly repping Harris and Tim Walz. Yeah, I mean, listen, even though Harris is leading Trump by 2 in Wisconsin, again, look at the history of how Trump has actually performed. For example, in Wisconsin, going into the election, Trump versus Joe Biden, he was losing by 7 points or so. On election day, Trump ended up falling short by less than a point, right? So he overperformed in the general election by about 7 points. If that repeats in 2024 against Kamala Harris, right? If right now Harris is leading Trump by 2 points in Wisconsin, if he ends up overperforming by 6-7 points like he did in 2020, then Trump is going to win, right? He's going to actually win pretty easily in Wisconsin. So again, you guys got to understand how to actually read the polls based off prior history, knowing that these polls are likely off. They're likely underestimating Trump's support.
Around where there will be this maybe silent Harris vote, and there may be more support for Harris than you might think. Folks I was talking with in this rural part of Wisconsin near the Wisconsin-Iowa border, near the Mississippi River Valley, say some are afraid to put out their yard signs for Harris because Trump supporters keep stealing them. So they think there may be this quiet movement for Harris, especially with wives who have husbands that support Trump, but they may feel differently. There's also a Facebook group that encourages sticky notes with encouraging messages to women voters who may feel vulnerable if they vote differently than their loved ones. And you see in this latest polling here on your screen, 49.6% to 47.4%. So Harris holding a slim lead there, 2% lead over Trump in Wisconsin. So it's interesting studying this effect, that Trump effect we saw in 2016, where it was the silent Trump voter. Maybe we'll see that for Harris in 2024, but it really remains to be seen now with 6 weeks to go, Nicole.
I highly doubt it. I mean, it could be possible that there's a silent Harris vote. I mean, there's no doubt that the only people that are silently voting for Kamala Harris, they're only doing it because of abortion, right? So the only boost that she might get will be from abortion, but it has to be a significant boost. So I don't know. I'm just saying, like, if you look at history, I think it's more likely that Trump is going to get that boost, that the actual silent vote is the Trump vote, right? I mean, it's going to be in favor of Trump rather than Kamala Harris. I don't think that there are that many people who actually support Kamala Harris, right? I don't think the people who support Kamala Harris are silent. No, I just don't think that there are that many people that support her. I think that the polls are oversampling women, right? I think they're oversampling Democrats in order to feed the fake Kamala Harris hype machine. And I think, honestly, they're probably more inaccurate than the polls of 2020 and 2016, right? In regards to how they gauge Trump's support, right? I would not be surprised on election day. I would not be surprised at all if Trump sweeps all of these battleground states. Wouldn't be surprised at all. Wouldn't be surprised one bit. Now, what everybody's predicting is that the race is going to be super close, okay? That whoever wins is only going to win by razor-thin margins. And I am hoping and praying that that's not the case, right? Whoever wins, I am hoping that they win by enough that we're not going to have all the drama and all of the nonsense that's going to come with whoever winning by a very, very, very close margin, right? I'm hoping that if Trump wins, he wins by a lot, okay? Because we all know that if Trump wins, the left, they will be boo-hoo-whining and crying. They're going to be raging. There's going to be chaos and destruction. They'll be claiming it was stolen, it was rigged. They'll be challenging the election. They would never accept it, right? They would never accept the results, especially if Trump wins by a razor-thin margin. This is why I'm hoping that, again, if Trump wins, he wins by a lot, right? I hope he sweeps, okay? And the way the polls are looking right now, I think it's likely, just based off history, and I'm not saying this to get overly confident. I'm saying this so that people actually get out and vote, right? You got to get out and vote. Based off history, it is likely that Trump can sweep coming up in this election because he's never polled better than he's polling right now. And if the same thing happens this year that happened in 2016 and 2020, yeah, he's going to sweep Kamala Harris. And I'm hoping and praying that that's the result. But right now, it's looking really, really, really good for Trump. It's looking really, really, really bad for Kamala Harris. This is why Kamala Harris is in desperation mode. This is why she's begging for another debate because she's losing momentum, right? Despite the narrative from the media, don't buy into the hype. Kamala Harris is not looking good right now, especially compared to where Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton were. She has a whole lot of work to do in order to catch up to their numbers. And I don't think that she can. I really don't, especially the more that she continues to avoid interviews. I think it's actually hurting her at this point because people are just not comfortable voting for somebody that they really don't know much about. But what they do know is not good in regards to the things that she said in 2019 and 2020 and the results, the actual results of the Biden-Harris administration. So, hey, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.